What's going on, everybody? Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me. Hopefully it's a little bit better than the audio before. It's kind of late at night. Everyone in my house is asleep, and I want to brew tomorrow. So I'm going to make a live broadcast right now of how to make a starter for my yeast for tomorrow. So first thing I have is yeast from my previous brew. You can see here the bottom of it is yeast. The middle part here is all just liquid, and I'm going to go ahead and just make this into something that I can actually use tomorrow for my brew day. So I have some water here I've kind of heated up, and we'll see. That's the wrong one. We'll see how quickly I can heat it up, get this into it, along with some DME. So first things first, how do I do this? I have a pint glass here where there's Brewco, one of my favorite breweries back in San Diego. Pint of water into my pot. And I'm going to make sure I have also on hand DME, dried malt extract. This is what's actually going to feed the yeast. So I need about 1/3 cup of DME mixed into my hot water, and I mix it up with a whisk. Once it's all put into solution, needs to boil for about 10 minutes. After it's boiled, I need to crash cool it. And then after it's crash cooled, then I'll be able to add my yeast in there. I'm probably going to pour off what's on the top here and just put this. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pour off probably about 2/3, and then I'll mix it up. So then this goes back into solution, and then I'll pitch that into my cooled liquid. Also, another thing I did before I started this is I have over here my sanitizer. It's just 1 1/3 cup of water, or gallons of water, and a teaspoon of my favorite sanitizer, which is iodophor. So I did 1/3 teaspoon of iodophor into 1.5 gallons of water. That makes my sanitizer. I got a little glass thing I like to use in there. I'm going to use a stir plate for the rest of the night. Right now, it's midnight, and I'm tired and a little drunk, and I want to brew tomorrow. So I got this kind of going so I can run my stir plate for about, 6 or 8 hours. I made my own little stir plate to actually spin the liquid, and then that'll introduce oxygen into it. And with that oxygen, it will make it I hopefully kick off by tomorrow. You normally want to let it set for like 2 to 3 days before pitching, like 2 days. I don't know, maybe a little less. We're going to review some of that stuff, some of that information. I got a book over there all ready to go. So here we go. Got water boiling. Start my thing. I got a rat. This is Ginger. She's a brew dog. Ginger loves me, and she loves to brew. She likes biting chickens and chasing lizards more, but she's here in the middle of the night to help me out. Oh, I'm going to wash my hands before I do anything else. So I'm going off of John Palmer's book, How to Brew. This thing is awesome. There's a whole chapter in here about yeast. I'm going to go through some of it with you, read it to you while we're waiting for this thing to cool, on how to make a starter. So right now, it's pretty much just saying that I need to boil a pint of water and stir in 1/2 cup of DME. So that's what I'm doing. Third cup third cup, 1 cup. Great. No half cup. All right. Guess we're eyeballing it. All right. Mix that in. I'm going to kill the heat because if I know anything about brewing, it likes to boil over. I'm just going to whisk it. Ooh, don't drink that. It's hot. Yeah, she's drinking it. She likes it. Just whisking it in. It smells like nice wort on a nice brew day. All right, let me kick the heat back on. It's 12:01. Now the water's been boiling for a couple minutes here while I've been talking. So I'm going to boil until about 12:10. That should be pretty good. I got my vessel in here ready to, it's all sterilized. Now, the only problem I'm thinking I will see is that this is cold. I just pulled this out of the fridge. I don't want to shock this into something like that and cause a big issue. So I can release a little bit of the air. And then I'm going to, it smells great. It smells like almost like a lager, which maybe isn't great. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and put this in a sink with just some kind of room temperature water. I got a little sink over here, and hopefully that'll warm it up a little bit more gently while watching this to make sure it doesn't boil over. You can see there it's kind of fizzing up. So that's what I'm going to do. Yep, boiled over. Ginger's loving it. I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit, hopefully get it up a little bit faster or a little slower. Ginger's cleaning up the mess down here for me, so that's great. I'm going to clean this up later. Of course, that was just cleaned today, so hopefully it nobody notices it in the morning. So, ingredients or things you need to do this: pot, cup of water, thermometer, it's great. Your yeast, obviously, DME, and I have some sanitizer, obviously, also helps. All right, so in my sink, I got 91 degree water. Move this over a little bit. Bag of DME, set that off the side. We're all done with that. This smells awesome. It smells fantastic. There we go. So I got my probe here. Another 5 minutes of boiling this. It'll be all set to go. It's not very much liquid. I hope I didn't boil off too much. Guess we'll see. Almost thinking about adding a little bit more since so much boiled over. You know what? I'm going to add a little more. half a pint. Luckily, I have an instant water heater over here, so it's not going to be totally freezing cold. You can see it stop the boil right away. Hopefully I can get that rolling pretty quick. Maybe I'll add another minute or two onto it. I'm going to wash this in the sink. Kitchen's dirty. You know how it is. So go ahead and wash this in the sink behind me. And I just made a total mess. I'm looking down here at this oven top, and it's just totally terrible. But whatever. It is what it is. I'm also going to add some yeast nutrient. Now, I've never... Well, when I used to do this a lot, I didn't use the yeast nutrient too much. Towards the end, I think I used it once, maybe twice. I don't honestly remember. The bag's open. It's the only reason I can say that. But my yeast nutrient, I'm going to put a 1/4 teaspoon. I think I got to check. 1/4 teaspoon of this into there and let it roll with it. It's just basically yeast, dead yeast cells, and some proteins and things. It's really nothing. But anything will help, especially with that yeast that I'm using. All right, so we're already boiling again. You can see that instant hot water heater really helped me out. I mean, it only took a minute away of my boil. So albeit the water that's in there now hasn't boiled the full 10 minutes, but whatever. So I'm probably going to want to add this now so that it then is able to go through the whole 10-minute boil. Really, what we're doing here is killing any kind of microbes or things that would be in there normally that could affect or infect or change the type of beer that we're making or the yeast. So this is already feeling warm, so that might have been too warm. This feels warm to me. So I'm going to pour out half of this and then shake it up and then kind of probably just let it sit on the counter. Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty much close to half and half. The yeast is already waking up. See little bubbles? Those little bubbles tell me it's already starting to think about doing something. So I'm going to shake this up really good. So what this ends up being, quantity-wise, is this was from a 5-gallon batch of all-grain beer. All-grain beer. I had a couple margaritas tonight. Don't judge. And I pitched 2 packs, the smack packs of the 10 WLP 1098. That's the Y Labs yeast into it, into the 5-gallon batch. I think it's going to end up being like a 7 to 9 ABV batch. So it's I guess a higher gravity beer. It's active. So it's a higher gravity beer. Now it's feeling cold again, which is making me happy. I'm going to putting it back in the warm water. I'm cooling down that water a little bit. So I cooled it down to about 83. The water bath, it's a small sink. It's like a 1 by 1 foot sink. I have that jar of yeast now sitting in. I think the temperature I had said before is a little bit too warm. It got warm really quick. Anyway, so that yeast I pulled out was 2 smack packs from a higher gravity beer. And you're really not supposed to repitch beer from a higher gravity or repitch yeast from a higher gravity beer because it has the ability to potentially become so inactive from all the alcohols, if I'm remembering this right, that it could basically not be very good yeast to pitch into your new beer. And then that could cause issues with having a good fermentation. So maybe this isn't the best type of yeast to do it with. After I collected the yeast, the 2 smack packs, created a lot more yeast. Obviously, they multiply when they're in the fermentation. The 5 gallons of beer gave me quite a bit more of the yeast. So after I transferred the beer into secondary, I then took the yeast cake that was in the bottom. I sloshed it up. I put it into 4 mason jars, the same size, and then I rinsed the yeast, not washed, because washing includes some kind of acid wash type. Actually doing some kind of like separation of chemical things. So I didn't do an acid wash or a wash of the yeast. I did a rinse. So I took 2/3 more water than I would need yeast. So I took a bunch of water, boiled it, got it, sanitized, similar to what I'm doing here, just boiling water for 10 minutes, let it cool, let it sit in the sink. Speaking of, I need to put a lid on this, and this is all set to go. This lid's too big. Nope, cool. That's it. So hopefully this steam sterilizes this lid. I should have put this lid on a little sooner to help it sterilize before putting it into the cold water bath. So yeah, I took the yeast out of my primary fermenter, and I went ahead and put into 4 mason jars, boiled a bunch of water. I topped off those mason jars so they're 1/3 full, topped them off 2/3 full. So obviously that'd be full of water. And then I shook them up vigorously, as it says to do, for a few minutes. And I sat down on the couch, watched some TV, came back up, shook them some more for a couple minutes. And they didn't really seem to striate the way that I would expect or expected them to do, just looking online. And by striate, I mean like you have like this clear water, and then you have yeast, and then you have trub. Trub is your leftover nasty grain stuff and the things left over from the yeast. So I was expecting to see those striations, and I didn't see them. So I ended up just going ahead and dumping the little bit of water on top. I spooned it off with just like a salad spooner. What do you call it? Dressing spooner, dressing thing. I don't know, a spoon, right? So I took that off, and then I poured the middle layer into another mason jar, and I was able to combine 2 mason jars into one. And then the obvious nasty stuff on the bottom I left. And then that's what these were. So you could see there was a lot of water in there, and then a little bit of the yeast on the bottom. So I think that was just because I added so much water, but maybe not enough water to really get a good rinse. But we'll see how this ends up being. So anyway, I ended up with 2 jars of that yeast cake on the bottom with quite a bit of water on top. It's like 1/3 yeast cake, 2/3 water. But it looks nice and compacted, and I still have, as you saw, that kind of ambery color. So anywho's, I have a good amount of water here. What I'm going to do is now crash cool this as best I can. Checking on my yeast here. It feels pretty good room temperature. Yeah, it feels great. So hopefully I didn't shock it too much by warming it up that fast. You can hear it is under pressure. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside now. Put this in there. I'm going to just put cool water. We have really cold groundwater. So I'm going to fill that up with groundwater, cool it down a couple of times just by submerging it about halfway with the water. And then after I get it close, really close, like all the quickly released heat off of there, then I'm going to add some ice. Hopefully it's not too loud, and hopefully I don't wake anybody up. But I'm going to add some ice to it, and that'll cool it down much quicker. Just for that last little bit. This water's 58 degrees. It's really cold. So I'm going to do my best to show you guys what I'm doing. There's a couple cables connecting everything, so it's kind of hard. Basically, I'm going to be circling the pot one way while circling the water the other way and make a counterflow kind of heat exchanger. Again, I'm just using tap water, and it's like very cold, 58 degrees, so this should be pretty quick. So, and while I'm doing that, luckily this pot top has a little hole in it, so I'm going to put this little probe in there to monitor the temperature, and I'm trying to get it down to like at least a high ale fermentation temperature. If I remember, it's like 60 something degrees, so high 60s, mid 60s should be good. So we'll see if we can get there. Right now it's at 120. It's already at 100. It's at 95. So it's at 90 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and drain the water and get some more cold water in there. It wasn't getting warm by any means, but you know, at least now I can touch my hand on the bottom and it'll get a little bit cooler faster. There we go. Now I can talk to you guys. So I just want to say that you can do this kind of thing. Like, I know this is kind of a crazy kitchen, but you can do this kind of thing in your own kitchen with just a pot of water, a pot of cold water, or even a bucket, like a Home Depot bucket. Just change out the water frequently, and it will do the same thing. I know it's just I'm using a sink instead of a bucket. So right now we're at 75 degrees. Again, I'm swirling it one way and I'm swiping the water around the other direction to make a counterflow heat exchanger. We're at 70 degrees. We just broke the 70 degree mark. I'm going to get it down to like 65 since it's just going so well. I probably won't add ice because I'm doing so well here. Sometimes what you'll see happen is you'll go like, obviously the first 20 degrees come off easy, and then the next 20 come off, after a couple minutes, and before you know it, you're stuck at like 85 degrees and you're trying to cool it off, and it's a hot summer afternoon and you're like, come on. And that's when you start adding ice to get those few degrees off. I'm having that problem here because our water's so cold, our groundwater. I'm at 66 degrees now. So again, 65. There it is. I'm already there. So that was easy. This is so nice. I've never had to do it before like this. So I'm going to let that sit for a minute. I'm going to check on my sanitation I'm going on here. I'm going to review the book just to make sure I'm not missing anything, and then we should be good to go. Also, I'm going to get some water because I'm getting pretty thirsty here. So this is the vessel I'm using. It's a 2,000 milliliter glass. I don't know. I forget what this type of glass is called, but it's basically like something you'd see in a lab or like in a, monster movie or something. The mad scientist. Just picked this up on a homebrewed place. I used to boil in this, and that's why you see this black line. This used to be where there was a thermometer, one of those tape-on thermometers I had on there. Of course, after boiling that on the stovetop like this, it didn't last very long. So, bad idea on my part. But that's part of it, right? Is living and learning. Now I'm going to transfer this into there. I also have a stir stick, which probably should have been in there, and the sanitizer, because I do want to put this on a stir plate to introduce the oxygen. And hopefully I don't overflow. I don't think I will. My yeast is ready. This is sanitized. Only problem is I don't have a bung or a plug that's that big. You can see it's quite a bit larger than like a normal bung on a carboy. So I'm going to, well, actually, you know what? Let me go grab one real quick. I'm going to make sure that it's too large. My memory was serving me right. I thought it was too large, but let me see. Just 1 minute. Okay, so on my run over there, I remembered I forgot to add my yeast nutrient. So I guess I'll just throw it in there and just hope that it doesn't cause any issues. So got an airlock here ready. Just throwing that in my bucket of sanitizer. And here's my plug. You can see it would just fit just inside there. So my bag o' bungs are no good. I'm gonna go ahead and throw those off to the side. Sorry if the audio has been maxing out this whole time. I just looked over and saw it clipping. So let's go ahead and turn that down a little bit. All right, so this is sanitized, ready to go. Keep dumping it out, get it ready. I'm gonna go ahead and I guess I will do my 1/4 teaspoon of yeast nutrient. Again, should have done this sooner before it cooled down, because potentially this yeast nutrient could have some bad stuff in it. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to pour this over the sink. I'm going to swirl that in there because it did look a little bit like it didn't want to settle in there. Oop. Okay. All right, so now I have basically what I made here was a beer, right? This is wort. It's just unhopped wort. Sometimes when you do this, you can actually add the wort to it Just making sure you guys can hear that. I'm seeing the little audio bars on there and they look real low. So anyway, so this is basically unhopped wort, which is ready to get my yeast starter in here. So go ahead and mix it up again. I'm going to give it a Dunkin' iota for. It needs to sit in there for 2 minutes, but anything's better than nothing. Okay, so now I have this. So this is all ready to go. The outside isn't completely sanitized because it needs to sit in there for 2 minutes before it becomes sanitized. But, a dunk is better than nothing. So kind of like those masks we're wearing nowadays. Like I heard something saying that wearing a homemade mask is like hoping your pants work like keeping a fart in, which, yeah, I have some experience with those, with real masks. And I won't get into it, but yeah, it's kind of silly, but whatever makes people feel comfortable. So this smells really good. I can actually hear it. I don't know if you guys can. It's doing some crackly there. So there's actually some life going on, which makes me feel happy that tomorrow's brew will go good. Got my starter here. Ooh, there's some chunks. Ploppy, ploppy, ploppy. Hopefully I don't sound like that tomorrow after the few margaritas I've had tonight. All right. There we go. Some left over. Now, think of yeast like fire. You have three things that make fire, right? You have a heat source, being the yeast. You have air, which is air. And then you have the actual thing that's burning. So whether it be wood or whatever it be. So that is the wood is basically your source of fuel, which is your sugar in here. So you need to have all three things there for this to work. Now you want a nice, like, raging inferno going on. So you want to have everything in here at proper proportions. Obviously, if you throw a bunch of logs on the fire too early, it kind of makes the fire go flat. Whereas, if you have a lot of oxygen, that's great. You're going to burn a real hot fire, but it's going to burn out quick, right? So, so it's just a nice proportion of everything. Now, obviously, there's guys that know way more about this than I do. I'm just going off of my own experience. And honestly, a lot of this is just my gut. Like I tend to make decent homebrew just with kind of things that I feel are good based on just my experience drinking a beer. And also I like to read a lot about a lot about a lot of things, which, kind of, I think helps me out with just understanding and being able to make decent beer. So that being said, I like to have just nice proportions of hops and of my malt and of my yeast and everything. So anyway, that's kind of off the rails there. I'm going to go ahead and get my stir plate going. So I need to find my stir bar, and I'm going to show you guys that I made a homemade stir plate years ago, and I hope it works. I haven't used it in a while, so hang on one second. So here's my stir plate. It has a fan inside that is a computer fan, and then it's just a rheostat, some Home Depot, or not Home Depot, but what do you call those? Radio Shack parts on here. So I have the Radio Shack power adapter, and then it just seems to work pretty good when the magnet sticks. So I just need to find that magnet. I thought I brought it out here. Oh, there it is. So this is the kind of magnet I like to use. As you can see, it has that ridge on it, and that ridge helps me with my stir plate because my stir plate isn't the best. Another thing is I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the out for kind of what I was talking about earlier about the bung going on there. Like, what am I going to put on there? I don't have a bung to go on there. So I'm going to use some aluminum foil and just throw a small sheet into my iodophore and just let it sanitize. So we're going to wait a couple minutes, about 12:30. Pretty much we're done. I mean, I got the spillover horrible mess that I got to clean up, which looks like a bunch of burnt marshmallows on my cooktop, and my family's not going to be very happy when they come up and see that I made a mess. Hopefully you guys were able to hear me this whole time, and hopefully you guys hang out with me tomorrow when I do another live broadcast of brewing. Hopefully you don't get too bored. Hopefully you just kind of take a couple things in, enjoy the time, make a couple comments on your way. So let's go ahead and throw that stir plate or that stir bar in there, and I'll get you guys a little close up of what it looks like when a nice whirlpool starts to form, introducing the oxygen, and we'll see if it kicks off. And then tomorrow we'll be able to pitch that into our beer and have a nice solid fermentation. All right, let me get you guys a close up here. I'm going to move the camera. All right, so here we go. Hopefully that thing's in there. This homemade setup, the computer fan with some magnets, tends to throw the magnet. Yep, you can hear it being tossed there. It's going to slow it down. So it's just one of the quirky. There we go. One of the quirks of a homemade system. So you can give it a listen. You can see it start to whirlpool now. Sounds like it's a little off balance. I don't know if you can see that. It says 800, which is 800 milliliters of solution. I'm going to take this, tear it in half, and just placing that over the top. So that's it. Hopefully you guys learned something. It's got a nice little whirlpool to it. I don't got really too much to say other than I'm going to pitch this tomorrow. Hopefully it has a little bit of chrysin on top, which is just yeast activity. As long as it has a yeast activity, I know it's viable, and it will pitch well into my starter or into my yeast. Into my beer tomorrow. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you have a wonderful night and happy brewing. Guess we'll get through all this together, and cheers.